Right, so there's one more thing I want to talk about here, and honestly, this is probably one of the easiest ways and fastest ways that you can start making your renders look better straight away, and that is picking a theme or setting or context for your render and sticking to that theme. Let me explain what I mean by that and why this is so important. So let me use this one as an example, and there's some other examples in here, but just this one is the one we've been working with, so it's easy to use this one. A big challenge of putting together a render that looks good is the fact that we have unlimited choices along the way. What I mean is, like, when you're choosing which models to add into your scene, which textures, which kind of lighting setups, there's unlimited choices that you can make. So like if I'm deciding, okay, what models do I want to put in my render? I could add, there's unlimited packs I could download, there's unlimited services I could buy that have models, there's unlimited things that I could model that could go in my render, there's unlimited things that I could go and find on the internet and download and put in my render, and and the same thing applies to lights, and there's unlimited colors and angles and positions and sizes, and there's no limit on the number of ways you could use a light or a texture or a model or the type of model or the type of texture, or you know what I mean. There's unlimited choices that we can make along the way. It also kind of compounds against each other when you have, because making a render isn't just one of those choices, right? It's you choose the textures, you choose the models, you choose the lighting, you choose which, how to place things in. Like there's unlimited choices for each step of the way. It's not just one choice that has unlimited options. It's unlimited choices that have unlimited options. And you can see how very quickly, if you don't narrow that down, that can become very overwhelming and very tough to make the right decision, right? If you're trying to make a decision with unlimited options, how do you know if you're choosing the right option? Especially when there's unlimited decisions throughout that process, right? Because a finished render is just a series of decisions that you make along the way. And if each one of those decisions has unlimited potential solutions, that becomes tough. So I think one of the best things you can do to just not have to worry about that as much or at all is just before you start making a render, choose a specific theme or context or place or thing you want to make. And then that will narrow down all of your choices to a very limited number of options. You can still obviously be creative within that set of boundaries, but doing this makes it so much easier to actually put things together in a cohesive and pleasing way. Let me explain what I mean using this as an example. So when I went into making this one, I didn't just decide, okay, I want to make a cool render, right? You saw me at the beginning choose, okay, I want to make this style of render with this thing, this type of place. Like I don't know if I decided I want it to be an abandoned factory specifically, but I decided I want it to be like this type of vibe, abandoned factory type vibe straight away, and I want to have like this kind of thing here, and it wasn't just going into it fully blind and like fully let's just make something cool. It was like a specific type of place, and by doing that, it allowed me to narrow down the number of choices I had to make to a very limited number of options. Like, so what I mean is this: say I'm making an abandoned factory, for example, like you see here, and I'm deciding, okay, what models do I need to add into my scene to make it look good at the end, right? So, there's not that many different options when it comes to something like this, because I know I'm making a factory. There's only so many different things that you would find in a factory. So we've got, pipes and staircases and crates and a giant fan and industrial equipment, and, it's pretty easy to come up with ideas of the specific models that I should be adding into this place to make it feel like the thing that I want to create, a factory. And so if your goal is just, let's go and make a cool render, and then, you're thinking about, okay, what models do I add into here to make a cool render? Well, now you have unlimited options, and it becomes overwhelming a lot of the time. Not to say it always becomes overwhelming and impossible, but a lot of the time it becomes a lot more difficult to make something good in the end. Okay, let's use this one as an example too. So there's one thing I will talk about at the end, and it's the person standing here. But aside from that, pretty much every single thing in here, from every model, every texture, all the lights, the way they're placed, the colors, every single thing in here is within a certain theme. And that theme would probably be like, you know, ancient temple type theme. Maybe not a temple, but ancient special place type theme. Like, look at all the engravings. It's all like ancient style engravings. Even the bevels on these models I made are like ancient style bevels, or you know, we've got treasure chests down here. We've got ancient pots. We've got even the staircases. The staircases are made of like stone slabs. Even the light source, you could argue maybe this looks a little sci-fi, I guess, but I would argue it looks a bit more, you know, fantasy, ancient spell type of thing. Like, we've got like fantasy style roots over here. It all makes sense that all of these things would be in this place. And so when you do that, you know, like I said, it makes those decisions along the way, creating the final render much easier, but it also just makes the render feel better and look better, and it's just more pleasing to look at a lot of the time when everything fits together and makes sense in a certain context. And so everything from the textures, the lights, like the lighting up here, for example, this isn't like a, you know, a sci-fi LED or something, or a sci-fi like emission neon sign. It's like, you know, the night sky or moonlight or something like that. It's, you know, like everything here was filtered through that theme that I decided at the beginning. Every choice I made along the way, from every model to add, every texture to use, which way to place the lights, which way to even place the camera, it was all filtered through that original decision of, okay, I want to make this a ancient fantasy thing. I think this is so interesting how this even applies to more than just the models and textures, but also the lighting and the camera, because, like, for example, the camera here. You know, you could argue that, like, I chose this camera angle because I knew, okay, say it's an ancient place, I know it's not going to be like probably wouldn't make sense to have like a drone shot or something, for example. It would probably, I want it to feel like you're some ancient, or like some explorer looking at this abandoned place. Where would you be if you were an explorer looking through this place? You'd probably be on the ground discovering it in the dark somewhere like this, right? So that's like every single decision goes through that one filter of like, okay, what is this thing that I'm making? So the one exception here is, I guess, this dude in the middle. It's not that ancient. This is actually me. The photos can have me with the backpack. But, you know, that still fits like the main idea. The idea is, I guess, we're like some explorers finding this ancient place and then activating some spell or something. I don't know. But like, it's, even that still kind of fits the original idea I had, even if it's kind of like a modern dude in here. But you know what I mean? Like, it all makes sense that all these things are in this place. This applies to pretty much every single render you create. So you can create every single type of render you want, but within each of those types of renders, it helps to narrow down your decisions to a specific theme or a specific vibe or a specific context, you know, that will help you along the way. So for example, again, a cyberpunk one, there's no models in here that are like, they don't make sense. There's no like fantasy pillars, like, you know, engravings or something like this. It's all stuff that would belong in this place here. And that means all of these things will look good together instead of looking weird and not matching up and not fitting together and looking like a bunch of random clunkiness. This is something that I see other people struggling with a lot, is like not choosing a specific theme. Like, the theme for their image is like cool render, like I said, and that makes it really tough to make a cool render, ironically. Here's what I mean. Like, when I was making this, it was pretty, you know, look how many different things there are. There's like neon signs up here, and like so many different textures and so many different shapes and models and buildings and people and surfaces on the, like, there's so much happening. How do you decide which models and which textures to bring in? Well, you narrow it down to a specific context or specific type of place or image or thing you want to create. So I would have in this one gone, okay, I want to make, you know, a cyberpunk render. What belongs in a cyberpunk render? Now it's easy to pick models and textures versus, let me make a cool render. What belongs in a cool render? There's unlimited things that belong in a cool render because there's so many cool renders. Now I don't know what to do. Whereas if you just say, okay, I want to make a cyberpunk thing, well, you already know what belongs in a cyberpunk thing. You know, we've got wires and signs and LEDs and neon and bright blue glowing big buildings. Like, it kind of like, it helps your brain just naturally generate ideas along the way when you're creating something, and it makes that a lot easier to just get into that flow state and let things, well, flow. It's hard to get there before you have an idea in your head of like the type of thing that you actually want to make, and the kind of theme you want to stick to, or the kind of theme that you want to stick to. It becomes very hard to enter that flow state, I've noticed, before you have a clear idea of that in your head. And so if you look at any of my work, especially the 3 things in the course, like the temple, the factory, and the forest, all of those are following this principle of like picking a theme before you get started. But also like pretty much all of my work follows this idea of like picking a theme before you get started and sticking to it. Like maybe not 100% of it, I don't think, but I'm sure it's not 100%, but like pretty much almost all of it, there's like, if you look at the models and the textures that I've chosen to use in here, it all makes sense that those things would be placed in this environment. So for example, this thing, I don't think there's anything in here that doesn't really make sense that it would be in here. So we've got like, metal, like incense burners, we've got stairs, like ancient stairs, overgrown vegetation, I guess the specific type of vegetation, you could argue what belongs here and what doesn't, but it all fits the same theme of like a, garden temple type thing. And it doesn't even have to be like a fully finished idea. Like this isn't really, I don't actually know really what this thing is, if I'm being honest. I couldn't really tell you exactly what this is, but I can tell you like the type of vibe that it is, the type of things that would belong here. And it makes sense when you look at this, all the things that are in here, why they're in here, if that's, if that makes sense. So like, there's nothing in here that's like, oh, that doesn't belong, that doesn't make sense. It all fits together in a specific vibe. And so you don't have to have like, I don't mean you should go in to starting a render with like a fully finished idea. That's not possible most of the time. What I do mean is like, you should have an idea of like the specific vibe, at least, that you want to create. And that's a pretty broad term, specific vibe, but like, like narrow down the context or the number of decisions you have to make in order to achieve the result you want, a good render. It makes it much easier along the way with every single choice you make to get to that final thing. I hope that makes sense. So that's it for this one. I think there's just one more video in the course. It's just the outro video, and then we're done. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one, and yeah, bye.